The great chamber of the Galactic Confederation stretched out like a vast metal flower. Thousands of seats hung from the curved walls, each designed for a different alien species. The air hummed with translation devices, working overtime as 847 different races prepared to make the most important decision in galactic history. Ambassador Sarah Chun sat alone in the human section. Her chair felt too big for the small space they had been given. Around her, alien delegates whispered in sounds that ranged from musical chirps to deep grinding noises. She could feel their eyes on her. Some looked curious. Others looked afraid. Most looked disgusted. The charges against humanity filled 3 massive screens above the chamber floor. Sarah had read them so many times she knew them by heart. Excessive violence, breaking peace treaties, building too many weapons, teaching dangerous ideas to young aliens. The list went on and on. High Counselor Zethkari stood at the center of the chamber. His tall, thin body swayed like a tree in the wind. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the room through the translation network. "Today we vote on Resolution 2847X, he announced. The complete removal of the human species from Confederation space. They have proven themselves too dangerous to remain among civilized races. The first witness was Admiral Krelvin of the Voldrani hegemony. His 6 arms gestured at holographic displays, showing human soldiers fighting in wars across the galaxy. Humans sell their violence to anyone who will pay, he said in his clicking language. They have no honor, no respect for proper order. They fight for credits, not for justice. Sarah wanted to stand up and explain that those soldiers were mercenaries, not government troops. She wanted to tell them that humans only fought when others asked for help. But she stayed quiet. The rules said she could only speak when the council gave her permission. Next came Speaker Velmoth from the Ethereal Collective. The floating, glowing being pulsed different colors as it spoke. Human ideas spread like a virus. It said, "They teach our youth to question authority. They speak of individual rights and personal freedom. These concepts destroy the harmony of civilized society." More witnesses followed. Each one told stories of humans causing trouble. Some stories were true. Others were twisted versions of the truth. A few were complete lies. Sarah kept careful notes of everything, knowing she would need to remember these words later. The Zentari representative, an insect-like creature with compound eyes, buzzed angrily as he spoke. Humans refuse to follow proper procedures. They ignore regulations. They take actions without asking permission from higher authorities. This chaos cannot be allowed to continue. Hours passed. The witnesses kept talking. Sarah noticed that none of them mentioned the hospitals humans had built. No one talked about the trade routes humans had opened up. No one remembered the wars humans had ended or the peace treaties humans had helped create. They only talked about the problems. Finally, High Counselor Zethkari called for the vote. The chamber fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the translation devices. Each species had one vote, no matter how big or small their population. The results appeared on the screens in real time. Sarah watched the numbers climb. Vote after vote came in against humanity. Some species abstained, but none voted to support her people. The final count made her stomach feel sick. 673 votes for Exile, 174 abstentions, and 0 votes against Exile. The chamber erupted in sounds of celebration. Alien voices mixed together in a symphony of relief and joy. They were happy to see humans go. High Counselor Zethkari raised his long arms for silence. By overwhelming majority, he announced, the species known as humanity is hereby exiled from Confederation space. All human colonies, stations, and ships must leave within 72 standard hours. Any humans found in our space after this deadline will face immediate military action. Sarah stood up slowly, Every eye in the chamber turned to her. She activated her personal translator and made sure it was set to broadcast to the entire room. Her voice was calm and clear when she spoke. "We understand the Confederation's decision," she said. "Humanity will follow this ruling. We will leave your space as you have demanded." She gathered her files and put them in her briefcase with steady hands. The chamber was completely quiet now. Everyone was listening. "However," Sarah continued, "we want to make something very clear. You have just told the most adaptable species in this galaxy to go make their own rules. We hope you remember that this was your choice." She walked toward the exit with her head held high. Behind her, the aliens began to whisper among themselves. Some sounded worried now. Others sounded confused. A few sounded angry that she had dared to speak with such confidence. As Sarah reached the chamber doors, she turned back one last time. The massive room full of alien delegates looked smaller somehow, less impressive. She had spent 3 years in this place, trying to find compromise and build bridges between species. Now she realized it had all been a waste of time. "Goodbye," she said quietly, though her translator carried the word to every corner of the chamber. "We will remember this day." The doors closed behind her with a soft hiss. Sarah walked down the long corridor toward the shuttle base, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. She pulled out her communication device and sent a simple message to Earth. Resolution passed. Begin Phase 2. Within minutes, responses started coming back from human colonies, research stations, and military outposts across the galaxy. The same message repeated over and over. Phase 2 acknowledged. Beginning immediate implementation. Sarah smiled for the first time that day. The Confederation thought they were getting rid of a problem. They had no idea what they had just set in motion. Humanity had been planning for this possibility from the moment they first made contact with alien civilizations. They had hoped it would never be necessary, but they had prepared for it anyway. Now the real work would begin. The aliens wanted humanity gone from their orderly, controlled galaxy. They were about to get exactly what they asked for. Sarah just hoped they would be able to live with the consequences of their decision. The shuttle back to Earth was waiting for her. It was time to go home and show the galaxy what humans could really do when they stopped playing by other people's rules. The evacuation began exactly 6 hours after the vote. Across Confederation space, humans started packing their belongings with a speed that shocked their alien neighbors. There were no protests, no desperate appeals for mercy, no angry speeches about unfair treatment. Just calm, organized action that looked like it had been planned for years. On Kepler Station, the massive trading hub that orbited the Confederation capital world, Commander Marcus Torres watched his people work. Human families loaded their possessions onto transport ships with military precision. Each person knew exactly what to take and what to leave behind. Children helped their parents without complaining. Even the elderly moved with purpose. The station's alien residents stood in the corridors, confused and worried. They had lived next to humans for decades. Many had human friends, human business partners, even human family members through marriage. Now they were watching their neighbors disappear like ghosts. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was packing up her laboratory at the Stellar Cartography Institute when her research partner arrived. Krivash was a Zentari, an insect-like creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected rainbow colors. They had worked together for 8 years, mapping new star systems and discovering trade routes that made travel faster and safer. "You cannot take the research data," Krivash said, his voice making worried clicking sounds. "This work belongs to the Institute. It could help every species in the galaxy." Yuki looked up from the boxes she was filling. "I'm sorry, old friend, but this research was done by humans using human methods. The Exile rules say we can't leave any human cultural contamination behind." She handed him a small data crystal. This has basic star maps that were already public knowledge. Everything else has to come with us. Krivash took the crystal with trembling hands. But the new hyperspace calculations, the quantum tunnel theories, years of work. We'll go where humanity goes, Yuki said gently. Maybe someday we can share it again. But not today. Similar scenes played out across the station. Human doctors erased their medical research before leaving. Human engineers dismantled equipment they had designed and built. Human teachers deleted educational programs they had created for alien children. Anything that could be considered human knowledge was being removed from Confederation space. What surprised the aliens most was how prepared humans seemed for this moment. Cargo ships appeared from nowhere to carry away human belongings. Transport vessels arrived at exactly the right times to pick up families. It was like watching a carefully choreographed dance. Captain Veltar of the Confederation Deep Space Monitor had been assigned to watch the human evacuation. His job was to make sure humans actually left on time. What he saw made him uncomfortable. They're not acting like exiles, he reported to his commanding officer. They're acting like people who always knew this day would come. The report was true. On human colony worlds across the galaxy, the evacuation proceeded smoothly. Families that had lived on paradise planets for 3 generations simply packed up and left. They didn't fight. They didn't beg to stay. They just loaded their belongings and walked away from homes they had built with their own hands on New Denver. A farming world in the Outer Rim, the human colonists had 2 days to abandon farms that fed millions of aliens. Sarah Mitchell stood in her wheat field, watching her neighbors load harvesting equipment onto transport ships. Her family had worked this land for 60 years. "Are you sad to leave?" asked Velenok, her ethereal neighbor, whose property bordered hers. The floating alien glowed a soft blue color that usually meant concern. Sarah thought about the question, while she looked at the golden wheat waving in the breeze. Sad? No. This was never really our home anyway. We were just borrowing it until we found where we really belonged. But where will you go? The deep dark beyond the frontier is empty, dangerous. There's nothing out there. Sarah smiled and picked up her last box. We'll see about that. By the end of the second day, something strange started happening. Alien businesses that depended on human workers found themselves suddenly understaffed. Restaurants that served human food closed their doors. Medical centers lost their best doctors. Research labs went quiet without human scientists. The economic impact was immediate and severe. Trade routes that humans had established went unused because no other species knew how to navigate them safely. Mining operations shut down because humans had been the only ones willing to work in dangerous conditions. Even simple services like equipment repair became difficult because humans had done most of the technical work. High Counselor Zefkari received reports from across Confederation space. Every report said the same thing. The humans were leaving, but their absence was creating problems nobody had expected. "Sir," his aide said during an emergency briefing, "the Kepler station commander reports that 17 major businesses have closed due to staff shortages. The Xanthari mining colonies are asking for emergency workers to replace their human crews. Even the Ethereal Collective is reporting problems with their computer systems now that human technicians are gone." Zefkari waved his long arm dismissively. "Temporary difficulties. Other species will adapt to fill these roles. The galaxy will be more stable without human chaos." But privately, he was beginning to worry. The humans were leaving too easily. In his long experience, dangerous species either fought exile or begged for another chance. They didn't just pack up and disappear with such calm efficiency. On the final day, the last human ships gathered at the edge of Confederation space. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel New Horizon. watching the frontier barrier appear on her screens. It was an invisible line that marked the edge of mapped space. Beyond it lay the deep dark, an area so vast and unexplored that most species considered it empty. "Ma'am," her communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the Confederation fleet. They want to know our destination." Sarah looked at the barrier one more time. Behind her lay a galaxy full of species that had rejected humanity. Ahead lay infinite possibilities. "Tell them we're going home," she said. The human fleet crossed the barrier together. 847 species watched them go, and most felt relief. The troublesome humans were finally gone. The galaxy could return to its proper, orderly state. What they didn't know was that humanity had been sending scout ships beyond the barrier for 20 years. They had already found new worlds, new resources, and new allies among species that the Confederation had never contacted. The deep dark wasn't empty at all. It was just waiting for the right species to claim it. As the last human ship disappeared from Confederation sensors, Sarah sent a final message back to the galaxy they were leaving behind. "Thank you for making our choice clear. We'll see you again when we're ready." Then the humans vanished into the darkness, leaving behind empty stations, closed businesses, and a galaxy that was about to learn what life was like without the species they had been so eager to exile. 3 years passed after the humans vanished beyond the frontier barrier. For the first time in generations, the Galactic Confederation enjoyed what their leaders called perfect peace. The small wars that had troubled the outer rim systems simply stopped. Trade disputes that used to require military intervention were now solved through proper diplomatic channels. Young aliens stopped asking uncomfortable questions about individual rights and personal freedom. The Ethereal Collective reported that rebellious incidents among their population had dropped to almost zero. High Councilor Zethkari stood before the Council Assembly and declared the Exile a complete success. 3 years ago, we removed a cancer from our galactic community, he announced. Today, we see the results. Peace reigns supreme. Order has been restored. The difficult decision to exile humanity has proven wise beyond our greatest hopes. The assembled delegates responded with their various sounds of approval. Musical chirps from the Songbird Collective mixed with deep rumbles from the Stone People. Even the usually quiet ethereal beings pulsed with satisfied colors. Everyone agreed that life was better without humans. But Captain Veltar of the Confederation Deep Space Monitor was not so sure. For 40 years, he had commanded patrol ships along the frontier. He knew the deep dark better than almost anyone in Confederation space. And what he was seeing there troubled him deeply. "The background radiation patterns are wrong," he reported to his commanding officer during their monthly briefing. The deep dark used to be filled with normal cosmic noise. Natural energy from dying stars, gravitational waves from black holes, the usual stellar chatter. Now there are dead zones. Patches of space where something is absorbing or redirecting energy on a massive scale. Admiral Krulvan looked at the sensor data without much interest. Perhaps natural phenomena. The deep dark is largely unmapped. We cannot expect to understand every energy pattern. Sir, with respect, I've been monitoring this region for decades. These patterns are artificial. Something is building out there. Something big. The Admiral's 6 arms made dismissive gestures. The humans were exiled with nothing but personal belongings and small transport ships. They lacked the resources for major construction projects. You are seeing shadows where none exist. But Veltar was not the only one reporting strange observations. Long-range sensor arrays across the frontier detected brief flashes of exotic energy that didn't match anything in their databases. Automated monitoring stations occasionally picked up electromagnetic signatures that suggested massive industrial activity. Most disturbing of all, the quantum communication. Networks sometimes detected encrypted signals moving through the deep dark at speeds that should have been impossible. Intelligence Director Kavith compiled these reports with growing concern. Her insect-like mind was designed for pattern recognition, and she was seeing patterns that made no sense. The humans had been gone for 3 years with minimal resources. They should be struggling to survive in the harsh environment of unexplored space. Instead, the evidence suggested they were thriving. The first refugees appeared in the 4th year. They came in small, damaged ships from beyond the frontier. Most were species that the Confederation had never seen before. They spoke of wars in distant regions, of their worlds being destroyed by unknown enemies. When Confederation aid workers tried to help them, the refugees told stories that made no sense. "The builder ships came when our colony was failing," said one refugee. A scaled creature with 4 eyes and no name that translated properly. "Our power systems had failed. Our crops were dying. We thought we would all die. Then the humans arrived." The aid worker, a Xanthari named Buzek, stopped what he was doing. "Humans? Are you certain?" "Yes. They had ships larger than cities. They fixed our power, gave us new crops, taught us better ways to grow food. They said they were from something called the Terran Sovereignty. They helped us for a full season, then left us with enough supplies for years. Where did they go?" "Back to the core worlds," they said. "To their new homes in the deep dark." More refugees brought similar stories. Humans appearing without warning to help struggling colonies. Massive ships that seemed to be built from technologies no database could identify. Talk of a Terran sovereignty that controlled vast regions of space beyond the frontier. Most refugees described humans as changed somehow. More organized. More confident. Speaking of concepts like the new compact and Terran space that meant nothing to. Confederation Intelligence.QAVeth requested permission to send a scout ship beyond the frontier. Her request was denied. The Confederation had voted to exile humans, which meant official contact was forbidden. Unofficial contact was considered too dangerous to risk, but the signs kept growing stronger. Deep space monitoring stations detected energy signatures moving through areas that should have been empty. Gravitational sensors picked up mass concentrations that suggested structures the size of small moons. Most troubling of all, some of the exotic energy readings matched theoretical predictions for technologies that Confederation scientists had declared impossible. "They're building something out there," Kavith reported to the High Council. "Something that defies our understanding of what's possible with the resources they should have available." High Councilor Xanthari dismissed her concerns with the same confidence he had shown for 3 years. The humans were exiled with minimal resources. Whatever they have managed to build cannot possibly threaten the established order of Confederation space. We have 847 member species and millions of worlds. They are a single species lost in the darkness beyond civilization. But Kavith had been studying human behavior patterns since their first contact with the Confederation 50 years ago. Humans were known for long-term planning. They prepared for contingencies that other species never considered. They had a saying that translated roughly as hope for the best, plan for the worst. The question that kept her awake during rest cycles was simple. What exactly had humans been planning for during their 50 years in Confederation space? The answer came in the form of a message that appeared simultaneously on every communication array in Confederation space. It bypassed every security protocol, appeared on classified military channels, and transmitted faster than light across distances that should have taken months to cross. The message was formal and polite. The Terran Sovereignty respectfully requests a diplomatic meeting with the Galactic Confederation to discuss renewed relations between our peoples. The message included coordinates just outside The frontier barrier, and a time for the meeting. What sent shock waves through the entire Confederation government was not the message itself, but how it had been delivered. The humans had somehow transmitted data through communication methods that didn't exist in any known technology database. High Counselor Zethkari called an emergency session of the full council. For the first time in 3 years, they would have to face the consequences of their decision to exile humanity. It appears, he announced to the assembled delegates, that the humans wished to talk. What he didn't say was what everyone was thinking. If humans could bypass every security system in Confederation space without even trying, what else had they learned to do during their 3 years in the darkness? The galaxy was about to find out. The Confederation diplomatic ship approached the meeting coordinates with its weapons powered down and shields at minimum. Protocol demanded they show peaceful intentions when entering neutral space. Admiral Krelvin commanded the vessel personally, bringing the most experienced diplomats and military observers the Confederation could gather on short notice. Long-range sensors are picking up something, reported the sensor officer, her voice tight with confusion. But the readings don't make sense. Admiral Krelvin moved to the sensor station with 4 of his 6 arms. What he saw on the displays made his breathing organs seize. A single contact appeared on the screen, but the size readings had to be wrong. According to the sensors, the human ship was larger than the biggest Confederation dreadnought. Twice as large. Maybe 3 times. Run the scan again, he ordered. Check for equipment malfunction. The officer ran the scan 3 times. Each time, the results were the same. The human vessel was enormous. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. They're requesting permission to approach. Granted, the Admiral said. Though his voice sounded uncertain. What appeared on the view screen made the entire Confederation crew fall silent. The human ship wasn't just large. It was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Its hull seemed to be made of some dark material that bent light around it like liquid metal. Energy fields danced across its surface in patterns that looked almost alive. Most shocking of all, the ship wasn't alone. Escort vessels emerged from the darkness around them. Dozens of ships. Then hundreds. Each one was smaller than the flagship, but still larger than most Confederation military vessels. They arranged themselves in perfect formation, creating a wall of metal and energy that stretched beyond visual range. How many ships are out there? Admiral Krelvin asked quietly. Still counting, sir. At least 300 visible contacts. Long-range sensors suggest there may be more that we can't detect. The Admiral had fought in 3 major wars during his career. He had seen the largest fleet battles in Confederation history. He had never seen anything like this. The humans hadn't just survived their exile. They had built a war machine that made the Confederation military look like children playing with toys. A smaller human vessel approached their ship and docked at the main airlock. The Admiral gathered his diplomatic team and went to meet their visitors. When the airlock opened, Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped through, wearing a uniform he didn't recognize. Behind her came a security detail of humans who moved with the quiet confidence of professional soldiers. Admiral Krelvin, Ambassador Chen said with a polite smile. Thank you for accepting our invitation to meet. The Admiral noticed that she looked older than when he had last seen her 3 years ago. But there was something else different about her. A calmness that suggested she now spoke for something much more powerful than the scattered human colonies they had exiled. Ambassador Chen, he replied formally. The Confederation is interested to hear what humanity wishes to discuss. Excellent. Shall we begin? They moved to the ship's main conference room. Ambassador Chen activated a small device that projected a 3-dimensional star map above the table. The Admiral studied the map and felt his confidence drain away. Like water from a broken container, the map showed the deep dark region beyond the frontier barrier. But it wasn't empty space anymore. Hundreds of star systems were marked with human symbols. Trade routes connected worlds in a network that made the Confederation's commerce lanes look simple. Most shocking of all, the map showed industrial complexes, shipyards, and orbital facilities that dwarfed anything in Confederation space. "This is the Terran sovereignty," Ambassador Chun said calmly. "Our new home in what you call the Deep Dark. We've been busy during our 3 years of exile." Intelligence Director Kavith, who had joined the diplomatic mission, studied the map with her compound eyes. "This is impossible. The resources required for this level of construction, the time needed for such expansion. Even with your entire species working together, this should have taken decades." Ambassador Chun smiled. "You're thinking like members of the Confederation. You assume that building things requires asking permission from central authorities, following proper procedures, waiting for approval from committees. We don't work that way anymore." She gestured to another part of the map. "We also didn't start from nothing. For 20 years before our exile, human scout ships were exploring beyond the frontier. We found resources out there that your people never imagined. We also found allies." New symbols appeared on the map. Species names and territorial markers for civilizations that the Confederation had never contacted. 17 different races, each controlling multiple star systems. "You see," Ambassador Chen continued, "the galaxy is much bigger than Confederation space. There are many species out here who were never invited to join your organization. Some were considered too primitive. Others were thought too dangerous. A few were simply ignored because they lived too far from your trade routes. They were very interested in meeting humans." Admiral Kralvin found his voice. "What do you want from us? Want?" Ambassador Chun looked genuinely surprised. "We don't want anything from the Confederation. We're here to establish the new rules for how our peoples will interact." She stood and walked to the view screen that showed her massive fleet waiting in formation. 3 years ago, the Confederation voted to exile humanity because you found us too dangerous to coexist with. We accepted that judgment. We left your space without argument or resistance. But we also learned an important lesson. She turned back to face the Confederation delegation. We learned that peaceful coexistence requires mutual respect. The Confederation never respected humanity. You saw us as useful servants who sometimes caused problems. When the problems outweighed the usefulness, you threw us away. The Terran sovereignty operates on different principles. Our allies chose to join us. They weren't conquered or absorbed. They maintained their own governments, their own cultures, their own territories. What they share with us is a commitment to individual rights, merit-based advancement, and mutual defense." Admiral Kralvin felt like he was drowning in cold water. "Are you threatening us?" "Threatening?" Ambassador Chun laughed, but there was no warmth in the sound. "Admiral, if we wanted to threaten the Confederation, do you think we would meet you with diplomatic protocols and polite conversation? Look out your window. Count the ships you can see. Then remember that this is just one small task force from one sector of sovereignty space." The Admiral looked at the display showing the human fleet. Each ship bristled with weapon systems that didn't appear in any Confederation database. Energy readings suggested power sources that bordered on the theoretical. If these ships decided to attack, his vessel wouldn't survive the first minute of combat. However, Ambassador Chun continued, "The sovereignty has no interest in conquest or revenge. We're here to establish clear boundaries and expectations for future relations." She activated her device again. The star map changed to show both Confederation space and the new Terran sovereignty. A clear line marked the border between them. The frontier barrier will remain in place. But now it protects your space from us, not the other way around. We will respect your borders absolutely. We expect the same courtesy. What about trade? Cultural exchange? Scientific cooperation? Asked Cave. Those are possibilities we're willing to discuss. On our terms. Under our conditions. The days when humanity accepted whatever scraps the Confederation was willing to offer are over. Ambassador Chun gathered her materials and prepared to leave. We wanted to make our position clear to avoid any future misunderstandings. The Confederation taught us that we were unwelcome in your galaxy. We've learned that lesson well. We found our own galaxy now. A galaxy where merit matters more than politics. Where individual worth isn't determined by committee votes. And where species are judged by their actions rather than their origins. As she reached the door, she turned back one final time. The humans you exiled 3 years ago were colonists and traders who tried to fit into your system. We're not those people anymore. We're the Terran sovereignty, and we play by our own rules now. After the humans left, the Confederation delegation sat in stunned silence. Through the view screen, they watched the massive human fleet turn and disappear into the darkness beyond the frontier. In a few hours, they would have to report back to the High Council and explain that their exile of humanity had created something far more powerful than they had ever imagined possible. The galaxy had new neighbors now, and those neighbors would never again accept second-class treatment from anyone. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council lasted 18 hours. Admiral Krelvin's report had sent shock waves through every level of government. The humans hadn't just survived their exile. They had built an interstellar empire that made the Confederation's 1,000 years of growth look modest by comparison. High Councilor Zethkari stood before the assembly, his tall frame swaying with exhaustion. Around him, delegates from 847 species argued in sounds that ranged from panicked chirps to angry roars. The translation systems worked overtime as representatives demanded explanations for how the primitive humans had become so powerful so quickly. The situation is clear, Zethkari announced. Trying to restore order. Humanity has established itself as a major power beyond our borders. We must decide how to respond to this new reality. Intelligence Director Kavith stepped forward to present her analysis. Her insect-like eyes reflected the light from dozens of data displays as she spoke. Based on our observations, human technology has advanced beyond our understanding. Their industrial capacity appears to be approaching post-scarcity levels. Most concerning, they have formed voluntary alliances with 17 non-Confederation species using governmental principles we find difficult to comprehend. The ethereal representative, a floating being that pulsed nervous yellow colors, interrupted her. How is this possible? We monitored human development for 50 years. Their advancement was consistent with expected patterns. Nothing suggested they possessed such potential. Kavith's compound eyes focused on the glowing alien. Our analysis suggests humans were deliberately limiting their technological development during their time in Confederation space. They showed us only what we expected to see. This statement caused an eruption of angry voices across the chamber. The idea that humans had been hiding their true capabilities for decades was deeply disturbing to species that valued order and predictability. Silence. Zethkari commanded. The question now is not how this happened, but what we do about it. The debate that followed revealed deep divisions within the Confederation. Some species wanted to ignore the humans and pretend they didn't exist. Others suggested immediate military action to contain the Terran sovereignty before it grew stronger. A few radical voices even proposed attempting diplomatic reconciliation. Admiral Krelvin spoke for the military faction. The human fleet we observed was more advanced than our entire navy. A direct military confrontation would be inadvisable. However, we cannot allow them to expand further. I recommend establishing defensive positions along the frontier barrier and restricting all contact with human space. Speaker Velmuth of the Ethereal Collective disagreed. Isolation serves no purpose. The humans have already proven they can reach us whenever they choose. Their communication technology alone suggests capabilities we cannot match. Perhaps negotiation would be wiser. The debate was interrupted when every communication system in the chamber activated simultaneously. Despite all security protocols, a message was being broadcast directly into the council chambers. Ambassador Sarah Chun appeared on the main screen, speaking from what looked like a vast command center surrounded by humans in military uniforms. Honorable members of the Galactic Confederation, she began with formal politeness. We wanted to clarify our position before any misunderstandings lead to unfortunate consequences. Zethkari gestured frantically at his technicians, trying to cut off the transmission. Nothing worked. The humans were broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't have existed, using methods that bypassed every known defense. First, Ambassador Chun continued, we want to address concerns about Terran sovereignty expansion. We have no interest in conquering Confederation worlds. Your space, your rules. We respect that completely. Second, we understand some of you are discussing military action against us. We strongly advise reconsidering that approach. The fleet you observed yesterday was a diplomatic escort. It represents approximately 1% of sovereignty naval capacity. This statement caused panic in the chamber. If what they had seen was only 1% of human military strength, the Terran sovereignty could crush the Confederation without significant effort. Third, we want to clarify our position on trade and diplomatic relations. The sovereignty is prepared to establish limited commercial agreements for resources we find interesting. Our terms are non-negotiable, and we require no approval from Confederation authorities. Ambassador Chun paused and looked directly into the camera. It felt like she was staring at each delegate individually. Finally, we want to establish a fundamental principle for future relations. 3 years ago, you voted to exile us because you considered humanity too dangerous to coexist with civilized species. We accepted that assessment. We left peacefully and organized ourselves accordingly. But understand this. We are no longer the scattered, subordinate people you exiled. We are the Terran sovereignty. We have our own allies, our own resources, our own rules. We will never again accept second-class status from anyone. The transmission shifted to show a star map that made every delegate fall silent. The Terran sovereignty controlled more territory than the entire Confederation. Hundreds of worlds, massive industrial complexes, trade networks that connected dozens of species. What humans had built in 3 years defied everything the Confederation thought they knew about economic development and technological advancement. The galaxy is changing, Ambassador Chun said. The age of Confederation dominance is ending. Other powers are rising. Some of them will be friendly to the established order. Others will not. How you choose to interact with these new realities is entirely up to you. We hope the Confederation will choose wisdom over pride. But either way, this is the neighbor you will have for the rest of galactic history. We suggest you learn to live with the consequences of your own decisions. The transmission ended as suddenly as it had begun. The chamber fell into shocked silence as delegates processed what they had just witnessed. The humans had effortlessly bypassed every security system in Confederation, space to deliver a message that was equal parts diplomatic, greeting and military demonstration. High Counselor Zethkari tried to restore some dignity to the proceedings. The Council will recess to consider this development. We will reconvene tomorrow to discuss our response. But there was no real response to consider. The humans had made their position clear. They would follow their own rules, make their own alliances, and pursue their own interests. The Confederation could cooperate or not. The choice was theirs, but it wouldn't change the fundamental reality of the situation. 6 months later, the first official reports confirmed what everyone already knew. 3 major galactic powers had requested formal alliance discussions with the Terran sovereignty. Human trade ships were opening new commercial routes that bypassed Confederation space entirely. Most disturbing of all, applications for immigration to sovereignty worlds were flooding in from across Confederation space. Young aliens wanted to live in a society where individual merit mattered more than species membership. Scientists wanted access to human research facilities where innovation wasn't restricted by committee oversight. Entrepreneurs wanted to build businesses in markets where success was determined by results rather than political connections. The exodus was small at first, a few thousand individuals here and there, but it was growing, and everyone who left took their skills, their knowledge, and their economic potential with them to humanity's new empire. Qa Veth prepared her final report on the human situation with a heavy heart. Her analysis was simple and devastating. The Confederation created exactly the threat we were trying to prevent. We took the galaxy's most adaptable species and forced them to adapt without restrictions. We removed the most innovative people and gave them unlimited resources to innovate. We exiled the most determined species and challenged them to prove their worth. The result was predictable in hindsight. Humanity has become everything we feared they might become. The difference is that now they owe us no loyalty, show us no deference, and grant us no special consideration. We taught them that peaceful coexistence was impossible. They learned that lesson perfectly. We now share the galaxy with neighbors who will never forgive, never forget, and never again trust the Confederation's judgment about anything. High Counselor Zethkari read the report in his private chambers, then deleted it from all official records. Some truths were too dangerous to preserve. But as he looked out at the stars from his office window, he couldn't escape the knowledge that somewhere beyond the frontier, humans were building something that would outlast everything the Confederation had ever achieved. They had voted to exile Earth, thinking they were removing a problem. Instead, they had created a rival that would shape the future of galactic civilization. The humans had indeed made their rules clear, and those rules would govern the galaxy for generations to come.